John Berger, in his book Ways of Seeing, postulates that the visual arts explore ways of seeing as if there are more than one. This idea that artists are looking at the world differently is obvious, but it might not be intuitive to many of us. How do artists see the world differently? Doesn't the sun shine on the world in the same manner? If artists are seeing the world differently, don't you want to know about it? Our body senses are designed to parse out the world around us after all. They tell us where we end and where the world begins. They help us navigate the world so that we can satiate our needs. When we discuss ways of seeing in the visual arts, we have to talk about light. Our eyes detect minute differences in the world around us based on the way our eye receives photons. Because of this biological reality, artists have been thinking about light for a very long time. Rembrandt is most famously called the master of light and shadow. His paintings seem to emanate a soft glow as the layers of oil paint trap and refract subtle shifts in color and luminosity. As a sort of opposite, there is the self-proclaimed painter of light, Thomas Kinkade. Here, there is hardly a shadow in sight. There are only slight variations in light. Everything glows, creating a bath of nostalgia. Where Rembrandt creates dark depths for things to emerge from, Kinkade washes away any blemishes with soft light. This coupling shows two contrasting visions, but I don't want to talk about either of these artists just yet. Rather, I want to talk about an artist who does not depict light with paint, but rather uses light as his medium. James Turrell is an artist of light. His website has a wonderful quote: "My work is more about your seeing than it is about my seeing, although it is a product of my seeing. I'm also interested in the sense of presence of space. That is, space where you feel a presence, almost an entity, that physical feeling and power that space can give." Since 1967, he's been making artwork using projected light, natural light, and lighting spaces. His work is impossible to photograph accurately because our eyes see so differently than cameras' lenses. In his Sky Space series, he makes a frame around a portion of the sky. Because your eyes use contextual clues to interpret colors, he's able to change the color of the sky by changing the color of the frame. At the Live Oak Friends Meeting House in Houston, Texas, he ties the Sky Space to the architecture. It is a Quaker meeting house meant for largely silent gatherings of faithful contemplating the Christian faith in community. Here, the white ceiling recedes into the background and the blue sky seems to enter the space. As you stare at the blue sky, it becomes eminently clear that you are in the sky. It reminds me of the childish question, where does the sky begin? All of his sky spaces are salient and magical, but something about this one, being in a contemplative space of worship, was particularly enthralling. It hints at a presence that is all around us, but we do not normally sense with our eyes. But this was not my most memorable experience of a Turrell piece. In 2007, I was able to experience a piece entitled End Around at Claremont College. I want to tell the entire story in order to get at how powerful the artwork was. My now wife and I approached the entrance to the piece, which was a slowly ascending ramp that wrapped around so that from the base you could not see the room that the piece was housed in. All I could see was a blue glow emanating down the ramp. A docent asked us to put white shoe covers on over our shoes so that we did not scuff up the floor. Then he said, "Don't touch any surfaces," which I found quite odd as I'm a person who has to walk with my feet touching the ground. Smirking, we began to ascend the ramp towards the doorway of blue light on our right. As we turned the corner into the room, we saw at its very end a large blue rectangle of light. And from about 20 feet away, I could tell that the surface was odd, but I was honestly less than impressed. I thought this was a very evenly lit rear projection screen. The floor continued to ascend towards the rectangle until about 3 feet away. As we approached the screen, we found there was a line painted on the floor, establishing the fact that we should not touch this surface. We must have spent several minutes trying to understand what was happening to our eyes. I knew there was something beyond a rear projection screen. I could not help but feel the need to touch this surface. There was something off about it, but I could not put my finger on it. I quickly checked behind me for surveillance, and of course, the docent in the room was watching me like a hawk. Guiltily, my chin sunk to my chest. I decided what I would do is turn around and swing the back of my hand against the surface as I turned, so that he could not see me move my arm. It was a foolproof plan. Of course, I could not lift my head because of the weight of my guilt. As I was about to turn and execute my Ocean's 11 maneuver, I looked at the place where the light and floor seamlessly connected, but there was no connection. Instead, I saw a lip where the floor turned away from me and plunged downward. The light was not a a surface. The rectangle was not a screen, it was a room. I suddenly realized that I was not standing in front of some backlit wall, but on the edge of a space in which I could see no walls. This effect is called a Gansfield. Terrell uses lighting techniques to completely illuminate an entire room so that there are no shadows and the space has no color variation. Because of this effect, the eye cannot interpret where any edges are. Instead of seeing anything, it only sees a field of color. The eye then does not know what to focus on or where to look. As soon as I realized this was not a surface but a space, my eyes started looking into the depth instead of at a surface. They could not see an end. All I could see was an infinite blue abyss. Immediately I stepped back from what was now a place of danger. I started to feel dizzy, and I told my wife, who was also looking at a surface, "That is not a wall, but a room." I watched her experience the same physiological disorientation as myself. There we were, standing on the edge of an infinite abyss. Before this moment, I had no conception of what infinity was really like. Now I've looked into it. Terrell truly takes my act of seeing and turns it toward me so that I have to acknowledge the limits of my own perception. I know that room is finite, but I cannot sense it. Terrell makes me thankful for both light and shadow. A world of all light cannot be pierced by the human gaze. I can experience the infinite, but I cannot comprehend it, even when Terrell puts it in a box for me.